Hey gang, Blankenstein here from Sonic Trinity Studios. Hope you guys had an outstanding day. This is part 3 of creating templates in PreSonus Studio 1. We're going to delve into the mystifying aspect of compression. This has baffled me for many years. Up until recently, I've just started wrapping my brain around this whole compression thing, and now it's a game changer. It has absolutely changed my world. It has changed the way I record. It has changed the way I mix. So, without further ado, hang on. Before you do, let's go ahead and click that subscribe button. Let's go ahead and click that like button and that notification bell so you can be notified of more videos from yours truly. So, let's not delay any further. Let's get back to compression. So before we dig into this, if you're like me and you love coffee, I love iced coffee. So what you need to do is get yourself an espresso machine and then get a bottle of Godiva chocolate liqueur, a little half and half, ice cubes, and you got yourself one hell of a coffee here. It's awesome. Okay, right there in the vein. Always prefer it. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Again, thank you very much for joining my channel and watching this video. I certainly do appreciate it. If you wouldn't mind, please be sure to give me a like and a subscribe and click that notification bell, and you can be notified of any new videos that I come up with. I'm always working on new ones, and I'm always here for you to help you improve your workflow, improve your knowledge in PreSonus Studio 1. So, in this part 3 of creating templates in PreSonus Studio 1, we're going to explore compression and the compressors that are specifically in PreSonus Studio 1, and also some third-party compressors that are personal favorites of mine. So, being able to do proper compression of audio in my mixes and recordings has baffled me for many years, and it wasn't until the last couple of years that the proverbial light bulb finally went off in my brain and it all became clear to me. So in this video, we're going to continue working with our recording template that we set up in video 1. I'm going to show you the 4 types of compressors. I'm going to show you the basic functions of a compressor. Then we'll get into the 3 stock compressors in Studio 1, and then we're going to wrap it up by showing you 3 of my favorite third-party compressor plugins. Whew. Lot to go through. So let's go ahead and dig on in. But before we do, disclaimer alert. We're not going to dig too far in the weeds, but be sure to stay tuned for information on a brand new course I'm developing for the beginner of recording and mixing. I will take you through the journey of recording on a track, recording multiple tracks, mixing your instruments together, using EQ, using compression, using your buses, using your effects channels, all to the master bus, and then master it, and then take you through the steps on how to get it out in the world, either through a digital or CD, if anybody's using CDs anymore. Be sure to be on the lookout for that. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and roll on. So, what is audio compression? In simple terms, audio compression is the process of manipulating the audio's dynamic range. In most cases, it's reducing the volume of the loud bits and increasing the volume on the soft bits, so the audible end result sounds consistent. Audio compression can be utilized in various audio sources, but I mostly stick to using as a dynamic tool or as an effect on an audio track, for example, parallel compression. And I'll explain more about this in my new series, Beginner Recording and Mixing Advanced Techniques, that I hope will be out pretty soon. So here's a little history lesson. I'm a bit of a history buff, so I had to look this up to see exactly when the compressor first came out. So the compressor was first introduced in the 1930s to the 40s, and it was used to control volume of TV and or radio personalities while they whisper or if they're talking quietly, and also as well as the clapping from a live audience. The Western Electric 110 limiting amplifier was considered the first commercially available compressor. And there's a picture of it on the screen. So let's move forward a little bit past 1940. So there are 4 types of audio compressors, each with a different sonic characteristics, but essentially have the same controls and do the same things. And those 4 compressors are the FET, VCA, Optical, and Variable Mu. And I'm going to explain a little bit about each one of them. So the FET compressor, which means Field Effect Transistor. It's great for a punchy tone, whether it's for drums, guitars, or vocals. And the most commonly used FET compressor is 1176. And that is this here. Okay? And as you notice, there is no threshold control. So the amount of compression was determined by the input level. The hotter the signal going to the dedicated circuits, the greater compression. And I'll explain more about this 1176 once we get into this video a little bit more. But moving along, because we got a lot to cover. So the next up is a VCA compressor. This is called a Variable Controlled Amplifier. This is a really good compressor to tame down those aggressive transients and their spikes in the volume in your audio track. A good VCA compressor that I found is this one from Plug-in Alliance. It's called a Vertigo VCS-2. This particular plugin mimics the unique feature of the coloring of the signal. The more you compress and make up the output, resulting in a punchy, precise sound without dulling the sound or gaining that nastiness. Alright, moving right along. Third on the list is the optical compressor. And this is considered in many circles as the optimum compressor for vocals. It is regarded as a slower, more smooth, and generally produces a more warmer tone than the counterparts. Its hardware equivalent uses an internal photocell to control audio gain. The signal goes through the photocells, and the photocells will start to glow with intensity, and as the audio passes through it, it either gets brighter or dimmer. The more audio signal goes through the photocells, of course, it's brighter, and of course, more compression is added to the audio signal. And therefore, it produces a nice warm tone, has a lot of punch, and definitely has that unique vibe, that mojo that other compressors can't produce. This particular plugin is called an LA2A, and this is a prime example of the most widely used in the business, either in the United States, worldwide. All big name artists have gone through and recorded through a LA2A. Alright, moving right along. The final compressor that I generally don't use enough, and I would like to start using it more. It's called the Variable Mu compressor. And a prime example of the Variable Mu compressor is the Fairchild. And is generally a tube type compressor that it relies on tubes to control the gain reduction. And this Fairchild plug-in, or Fairchild hardware, is a very widely utilized compressor because it's simplistic controls, but it has a very unique tone. It's very easy to use, very, very powerful. And it just, I hate to throw that word out there, but it's got that mojo. So with that said, let's explore the main functions of a compressor. On the screen, I've got the stock compressor in PreSonus Studio One, and I'm going to quickly go through the controls and offer a brief explanation on each one of these. On the left, you have the threshold, you have the ratio, you have the knee. The threshold is considered your ceiling. So any audio that goes up above the ceiling is the audio that's going to be compressed. The ratio adjustment control determines how much gain reduction the compressor applies when the signal passes that threshold or that ceiling level. This is considered how much. For example, at a 4:1 ratio, I'm just going to put this up to 4 to 1. This means for every 4 dB of signal that rises above that threshold, the compressor will increase the output by 1 dB. So, in essence, a 1-to-1 compression is basically no compression at all, and a 20-to-1 compression is what they call smashing that audio. In my opinion, this very high setting is mainly used as an effect more than a dynamic action. Moving over to the right, we have attack and release. These two controls are very, very important because the attack controls how fast the compression is applied to the signal, and the release controls the amount of time the signal is allowed to return to its uncompressed state. You may have heard the term transient, and if you look at the waveform in your track, at the very beginning is the loudest peak. This is called the transient, and this will be the part that hits your threshold first. This whole section here is called a dynamic range. So the goal here is to tame down this transient so that it's just about at the same volume level as your dynamic range here, without squashing it and making it sound unnatural. You don't want the transient to leap out at you out of the speaker unless it's for an effect, but you want it to be a pleasant increase in volume rather than, jumping out at you. Another couple of controls that may be on a compressor and it may not be on a compressor, but most of the time they are on a compressor. It's called a makeup gain. This is used to compensate for the lower volume of your audio after it's been compressed, because as you compress the audio, your volume is going to go down. So if you use a makeup gain, it's going to increase that audio volume to compensate for that. In this particular plugin, this is the stock plugin in PreSonus Studio One, you have also an input gain control. This actually controls the actual incoming audio into the compressor, and then you would use the makeup gain to compensate for the compressed signal. Now that that's out of the way, let's look at a couple of stock compressors in Studio One. So the first compressor that we're going to look at is one of the stock compressors in Studio One. It's called Compressor. So the basic controls are threshold, ratio, and a knee control. And you would adjust the threshold to start to compress the signal. And then you would adjust your ratio. And this is how much audio signal is being compressed. And then you would use your attack control, and this adjusts the speed of the incoming audio. So in other words, how fast or slow the transient will hit the threshold, be compressed, and then by adjusting the release, this will determine when the compressor will let go of the audio after it's been compressed. Makes sense? Clear as mud, huh? So let's run some audio through this plugin and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm kind of cheating with this audio track here because it's actually recorded from a MIDI bass track. And the MIDI bass track doesn't really give you a good example of how transients are or the dynamic range because it's basically already done for you. But I will be able to show you how this compressor works when you engage it. So let's go ahead and hit play. So as you can see, I'm going to just turn down this, reset everything back to 0. So my first order of business is to actually come in here and adjust the threshold. But before we do that, I'm going to just kind of point this out. See this floating marker right here? I can't even keep my thing on there. It's just going crazy right there. Okay, so that is your incoming signal that's showing on this graph here. And right now we're looking at about, -6 RMS. RMS meaning the consistent audio volume that's hitting the compressor right now. So what I want to do is I want to kind of tame down a little bit of the -6 and get it more level. But I want to tame it down so much where I'm going to lose the energy of the bass guitar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure the volume's down a little bit, and I'm going to adjust my threshold up to about that area right in there. Okay? And that may seem like a really high threshold, but we're getting to that. We can adjust that. So that's fine. I'm going to start off with a 4:1 ratio. Just come in here and just do that. Yep, that's good. You can also click in there and say 4.0. Alright. We're not going to worry about the Neve right now. We'll get to that later. But now we're going to concentrate on the attack, and I'm just going to give it a little bit of an attack, and I'm going to give it a fast release. Okay, lower number fast attack, higher number slower attack. So I don't want to hit the compressor really hard, really fast with a bass guitar, because like I said, I don't want to pump, what they call pumping the compressor. I want to give it a nice, just kiss that compressor a little bit so it kind of tames down those peaks a little bit. Alright, so I'm just going to bring back the compressor just a hair. And you see this line right here. This shows that the compressor is actually working. We've got a signal that's actually hitting that threshold or hitting that ceiling and not going past it. You can also see how the audio is still showing that it's hitting the threshold and being compressed. So right now it's being compressed probably about 2 to 3 dB. Alright, so that's basically how a compressor works. With this compressor, of course, you got an input gain control. Audio signal comes in through the compressor. You can adjust that. And of course, the makeup gain with the automatic makeup gain control. This is a manual control, so you can manually adjust the output of the compressed signal to make up for the compressed signal. Or you can select or enable the auto, which means automatic makeup gain, which enables the algorithm in the plugin to actually do it automatically for you. You have a couple controls down here. One's called the side chain. You can use this to filter out. This acts kind of as a high pass filter. You can adjust your frequency, your low frequency. So for instance, 58 hertz of this low frequency won't hit your compressor first. You can kind of filter that out so the compressor can not focus on that frequency. And then your high cut frequency, of course, you can adjust that so where your high frequencies don't hit the compressor. You also have a global mix knob. This is actually used as kind of a parallel compression. You can dial this back to, say, 50%. So 50% of the compressed signal comes in, and you have 50% of the signal that's uncompressed. Hence, parallel compression. The next stock compression plugin that's included within PreSonus Studio One is called the Channel Strip. And this is a combo plugin as it has multiple functions. And this mimics a simple, straightforward channel strip, and it's usually found on mixing consoles. We have a high-pass filter. We have a simple compressor with a compress control, which is kind of your threshold adjust. You have an expansion, or expand, and adjust the audio expansion amount. We have slow, medium, fast, which control the RMS averaging speed. We have a 3-band EQ, and we have a makeup gain control. Focusing back on the compressor, if you run audio through it, again, this is a very simplistic compressor. It either compresses or it doesn't compress, and you don't have the attack or release. It pretty much does it automatically. So if you run some audio through it, you can dial up the compress adjustment until you start seeing this light start blinking a little bit. I don't know if you can see that or not. A little bit there. Okay, and then we're going to just expand a little bit. And I'm going to set this to an RMS of medium because it's pretty much the same level. So that is pretty much it. So as you can probably hear, or maybe you can't hear, and I was just listening to this on some good headphones or good studio monitors. You'll be able to hear the difference between an uncompressed signal and a compressed signal. So I'm going to play this again. And I'm just going to bypass this. Let it come around again, bypass, and engage. And maybe you can tell the difference, or maybe you can't. Honestly, I can't tell the difference. Anyway, this stock plugin in PreSonus Studio One is a very nice channel strip, very simple to operate, and it's fully transparent. Does very well. The other stock plugin in PreSonus Studio One that I want to show you, and this has come a long way. It has a lot more features than it used to, and this is called the Fat Channel XT. And this powerful stock plugin, it offers several plugins all in one convenient interface. So at the top section you have your high pass filter and your gate. Second section you have your compressors, and the third section you have your EQs. In this section we're going to concentrate on the compressor section. You have a standard compressor, you have your threshold ratio, attack and release, key filter, and a makeup gain. Also the auto makeup gain control is in here as well. The other two compressors that are featured in here, you have a tube compressor, and this may look pretty familiar. This is based off the LA2A, which is the standard optical compressor that's beloved and used all over the world. And then you have the FET compressor, which is the equivalent of 1176. Again, used in many studios all over the world, loved by many. While we're talking about channel strips, which I wasn't talking about channel strips, I was a minute ago, but you know, it's okay. We'll go to channel strips. So I'll go ahead and show you this. So a couple months ago, we were talking about channel strips, and I wanted to show you 3 of my favorite channel strips based off of analog consoles that I've worked on in the past. And I'm really showing my age here. So, and this is to demonstrate that compressors don't have to be standalone. They can be embedded in what they call a channel strip. So all a channel strip is if you look at a mixing console from top to bottom, you'll see a high pass, low pass filter section. You'll see a little mini compressor, an expander. You'll also see your EQ controls. You'll see an input gain and an output gain and a meter bridge. And then this is your fader down at the very bottom of the mixing console. Of course, this one is based off the SSL 4000E console. This one is the 4000G, and this one little baby right here is the Neve mixing console. As you can see, all 3 of them are basically set up exactly the same way. So if you're good on the SSL, you'll know what to do on the Neve console. As far as the controls are concerned, they're set up in basically the same exact way. Little bits and pieces, little differences between all 3 of them, and of course the biggest difference that you'll probably see, well, not see, but hear, is each one of these plugins, since they're based off of different mixing consoles, they all have a different vibe. They all have a different tonal characteristic, and you just have to dig in, you have to hear it. So talking about channel strips, I thought this would be a great segue to show you my personal favorite third-party analog plugins. So first up, Slate Digital, the plugins that are featured in the virtual mix rack. I'll show these to you. Awesome plugins. I was so happy. I've been using Slate Digital products for many years. There's one specific plugin I was waiting to come. I was nail biting, waiting to come out, and that's this little baby right here. When they first were talking about putting out an LA2A or an optical compressor and adding it to the virtual mix rack, I was so excited. So as you can see, I'm just going to go through this pretty quickly. Again, this is the LA2A compressor. This is the optical compressors, brand spanking new. Well, it's not brand spanking new. It's came out within the past couple months. So they have this out. So excited to get it. Of course, they have the FG116, which is the modern equivalent of the 1176. We have the vintage blue stripe 1176, and we have the standard FET FG116 all-around Swiss Army knife with 1176 compressors. This compressor, included within the virtual mix rack or the virtual analog bundle, is based off the Empirical Labs Distressor. And this is I don't even know how to describe it. It's got a unique sound and so much control that it's a shame not to use it. It's a shame not to throw it on every single track and just give it all. It could be pushed hard, used very subtly, definitely has a lot of nuance to it that other compressors don't have. And lastly, this compressor, the FG401, I call this the Swiss Army knife of compressors because I use it basically for everything, from drums, guitars, vocals, external instruments, brass, horns, so on and so forth. Just use it on everything. And this is based off of a British channel compressor, and it has a lot more features. Another compressor that I've recently started using on virtually every recording and mix is this baby right here. All of them are babies as far as I'm concerned. So this is put out by Brainworx, and this is called the Townhouse bus compressor. And this little jewel, well, I have no other word for it than it is absolute pure magic. A little background on this. The hardware version was built back in 1978 by Townhouse studio engineers, and they were built out of components supplied by Solid State Logic, or SSL. An interesting factoid about this bus compressor, though. The SSL only had an integrated bus compressor. So the engineers at Townhouse decided that they wanted to build an outboard module that would essentially be a replacement to the onboard bus compressor. And they thought, and while we're at it, we'll add a few more features. So just like with any other compressor, we have a threshold, we have a ratio, we have an attack, we have a release, and we have a makeup gain. The added features to this, though, we have the key-in control. Well, let's go ahead and start from the far left. Comp-in basically enables, disables the compressor. We have a key-in control. We have of course, we have a meter bridge here that measures the input signal to the compressor. Scroll all the way over. We have an auto fade mode, which is pretty cool because you can set this up to auto fade the signal after it's been compressed. I almost never use it. I don't know why it's there, but maybe I love it, maybe I don't know. Honestly, I've never used it. The added features to this, you have a headroom control, which adds or decreases the incoming signal to the compressor. We have a V-gain, and this controls the analog noise of the hardware version of this. So hardware has an inherent noise because it uses transistors. And sometimes in analog recording, you want that noise in there because it adds characteristic. It's like a little scratch, on something. So, but sometimes you don't, so you can increase it or decrease it. And of course, you have your sidechain filter here where you can filter out different frequencies so it doesn't hit the compressor first. And of course, you have your mix control, which acts as a parallel mix. This plug-in, I've just recently started using it, but it is quickly becoming my most favorite compressor plug-in. And this is the Purple Audio MC77 from Brainworx. And it's put out by Plug-in Alliance. And if you would like to go check this out, go to pluginalliance.com. Go check out the Purple Audio MC77. Download the demo. Give it a run for its money. It absolutely does a fantastic job. So this is a standard FET style compressor. It looks pretty familiar because it looks like 1176. The input controls how much audio signal is going into the compressor. Your output is your makeup gain. You have your attack, release, you have your key in, you have your sidechain link, and you have your ratio buttons here. This is kind of your like a 4-to-1, 8-to-1, 12-to-1, 20-to-1. meter bridge over here on the side. You have your input-output gain reduction, your output, and of course this changes the meter bridge to show different aspects of this. This particular plugin, you can have it set up as a mono or a stereo. This is showing a stereo. The mono, of course, would just have the single rack showing here. Down at the bottom, you have the TMT to randomize the channels. You have a perimeter link. You have the mid-side enable disable. Headroom control. You have your high pass sidechain filter. Again, you can filter out different frequencies so it doesn't hit the compressor all at one time. It kind of makes room for the other frequencies to come in and be compressed. Everybody's got to play good in the sandbox. You have a mono maker here where you can adjust your frequency of what you want to kind of focus a mono signal on, like a kick drum or a bass guitar. Stereo width control. And what I love about the stereo width control is that it really sounds natural. I've used a lot of stereo enhancers, plugins in Studio One and in other DAWs, and it ends up making the audio sound almost fake. So this stereo width control is so good. It sounds so natural. You can actually crank this wide open, and of course you get this huge stereo field, but it doesn't sound overly processed. I don't know. Maybe it does, maybe it does. I don't know. We'll see. I'll play a little bit of it for you. We'll go ahead and we'll enable this and play some. And this is set up on my master bus, so this whole track is going to go through. So we'll see how this sounds. So again, you have the input control. So we're going to turn this up, turn this down. So this will engage the compressor and determine how much threshold or how much gain reduction we're going to actually set this at. Okay. I'm going to turn this down just a hair. Okay, so as you can see, I've got a fairly fast attack, fairly slow release, 8-to-1 compression, and I'm compressing about -1.5 dB. Very light compression on this. So I'm going to turn up the stereo width, and hopefully you'll be able to hear the stereo expansion a little bit. It's so awesome. It's so awesome. So go out to Plugin Alliance. Go check out the Purple Audio MC77. Great compressor. It does such an awesome job. Super easy to use. You can throw it on just about any instrument. Drums, bass, guitars, vocals, whatever. I specifically like using this on a master bus, and I like using it on drums. Just my personal preference, but you download it, put it on your tracks and see what you like to use for it. So again, if any of these plugins triggered your interest, and be sure to go to slatedigital.com and go to pluginalliance.com and download a demo of these. Now I'll post a link in the description below. I guarantee these plugins will not disappoint you. Well, that's it, gang. Thank you so much for watching my video on compression. Be sure to look out for part 4, where we'll delve into more plugins, more tips and tricks in PreSonus Studio One, and expanding your template that we've been working on all this time. Be sure to click that like button. Be sure to click that subscribe button and that notification bell. I would really appreciate it. And be sure to put all your comments down in the section down below. Let me know what kind of compression that you're using, what kind of plugins you're using. If you're using not really great third-party plugins that you absolutely love, let me know what they are. I've got a bunch of them. If it's something I haven't heard of, please let me know. I'll go check them out. Promise. So, until next time, you guys have a great day and go forth and conquer.